Andy was kind enough to invite me to come to Amazon's conference where they were holding a startup competition. And so we talked a little bit about what was Amazon trying to do. And as you heard, there was a key thought that Andy had, which was to establish a developer community and to develop some great showcase applications that would really bring to life what was possible in the cloud. And so he asked me to come and give a presentation at that event, which I duly did very briefly to sort of preface this. And we called this cloud hatching. And the idea of cloud hatching is very simple, and that is that if you could start today with the assumption that everything is available in the cloud, you'd start very differently. And I know this for a fact personally as an investor, because I've got Wayne here from Demandware, who when we started our e-commerce business back in 2002, there was no AWS. So we didn't have the luxury of thinking about this. But by contrast, when another of my investments, Acquia, Brian was sitting in our office, when we were incubating that, we assumed that the cloud was going to be there. And in fact, we wrote an entire business model around the idea of the cloud. So two extreme examples there. But this is a world that's moved on. And so just to give you this as a background, we think about this as an opportunity for startups. We think that you can cloud hatch your business very differently today, knowing this. And in particular, as Andy said, you can innovate in a way that was never possible before. You can afford to spin up 1,000 instances of something and try it. And if it doesn't work, just shut it all down and then move on to the next one. So that whole notion of prototyping at this early stage, really in a way free, is just so exciting. But on the other hand, we also think it's incredibly important that you do that with a clear understanding of one of the principles we talk about in the business model area, which is innovating around your core. So again, Andy highlighted this beautifully, which is that what really Amazon was doing was they were taking away all that undifferentiated heavy lifting. In fact, when I first heard about Amazon was, I think Bezos came to talk at MIT, funny enough. And Jeff Barr was there afterwards, and I went like beeline up to him and said, "Is this real?" Because I just didn't believe it. It was like, this is like the VC's dream. We waste all this money over and over again at every single startup. So one of the things I really encourage you to do is to think about cloud hatching where you do absolutely the bare minimum. So we're not talking about the minimum viable product now. We're talking about the minimum viable differentiation. And what I mean by that is everything in that product that is undifferentiated, put it in the cloud. Use somebody else's core competency to build around, because that's going to give you the highest possible value for your startup. So MVP is great, but look for minimum viable differentiation and get that right to the core. And I see you nodding, but I hope that's a key part of what we're going to talk about today. The second thing that I would encourage people to do, therefore, is to look outside at what's possible. I mean, again, when we started in many of these companies 10 years ago, there was no such thing as an ecosystem. I call it a weather system to keep with the cloud theme, with tens of thousands of open APIs that you could build on. But these are readily available. There are cloud services today that do everything, not from just storage and compute, but price comparison if you're in e-commerce, or at the other extreme, data validation. Heck, you can even get cloud services like the Amazon Turk to do, obviously, access to crowdsourcing. So it's just extraordinarily different today. And again, as a startup, think about how you can leverage these kinds of things to build your business, to hatch your business in the cloud differently. Now, this is not something that also is just about the startup. I mean, you heard Andy sharing some of his experiences about he took Amazon as a business from inception. I have a very simple framework that we often talk about in the go-to-market piece, the see, try, buy, fly, die model, which is really the life cycle model. And if you look at any business model, what really comes to the fore is it really works if you manage to extend this life cycle. If you make the life cycle actually repeat, so you can both upsell and get a long life cycle value from your customer. That's when your model really starts to work. Now, why does the cloud change that? Well, think about this for a second. In the old model, we had to go and sell every single upgrade. No, never mind upgrade, every update. If there was a security patch, we had to figure out how to get that shipped to a customer and out there and in their hands. I mean, in my experience with Symantec, for example, when we were getting the virus business going, we literally physically had to ship disks out to people when new viruses came out. I mean, that just seems so insane. But imagine if the cloud had been there and we could have done what we now do, obviously, which is just make this a service. Just subscribe to it. You can make it so much easier for the innovation to come forward and for the adoption of that to be painless and effectively reduce all of the friction in this, and therefore extend the customer lifecycle with increased value at a higher rate of innovation. This is just a new world, and it's enabled by the cloud. And I'd go one step further, and I would say that it's actually helping you reach a very different set of marketplaces. Andy gave a great example of this. You can go global from day one. That is just game changing. It means you don't have to think about your segment, your minimum viable segment, as being geographically bounded. You can now think about it as a particular segment across the globe if you want to, so long as they all have that same set of needs. So it's a very different world to think about. And what I constantly see, because I've been evangelizing cloud since, frankly, I first heard the early innings of it, is that very few startups really stop and think about how to reinvent from the core what it is they do in every part of their life cycle, from the innovation all the way through to the go-to-market. What I hope we'll see, and I'm now evangelizing a little bit of vision here, is that actually people create a trifecta of things. They look at how to cloud hatch their business, but they also look at how to create a disruptive cloud-enabled business model, something that would not be possible without the cloud. So these kinds of subscription and renewal-based models that obviously enable very disruptive things. And frankly, it's a public company, so I can't say much about it except we announced results yesterday at Demandware. Record-breaking quarter. That was a business model disruption more than anything else. It was charging on a per customer GMV basis in a shared value model. That would not have been possible without the cloud. We were able to do that, as hopefully Wayne will give you some sense about it. And then, as I said, go after unreachable markets that you wouldn't have been able to get to had you not had this innovation. Because instantly at that point, you're advantaged to anybody else who isn't taking advantage of this. And you're putting yourself in a position to be a winner. So with that said, we think the future is very bright. As I mentioned, we're running this survey. You have the link to it here. We'd love you to all contribute to it. But what we heard last year, in the second year, was that every software category, for example, is going to be disrupted by cloud. There wasn't one that didn't come back with at least 50% of people saying it's going to get disrupted, whether it was big data, or it was CRM, or it was HR. So it's a phenomenal opportunity. And we think the combination of these various different clouds is actually going to be where the real opportunity is. So for example, it's not just media and entertainment and social and collaboration, but if you think about all of these things, imagine the day when and frankly it's really here, so I don't even have to say imagine. These cloud services are all reaching you today via your mobile device. It would be useless without the cloud services. But the fact that it's tracking you, it knows who your friends are, and it can enable you to do payments means that if you're out literally with a group of people and you want the best recommendation from your friends about what you should go and see, you can get that instantly. And then you can decide where is the closest place, and you can instantly then transact and buy a ticket and go there. And then that data can be kept on you to make the recommendation about what the next thing you go and see is. Every one of those things I just talked about is an example of a cloud service that's being enabled by this next wave. And the combination of them is unlocking some fantastic potential here.